One of the questions I was asked in one of the conferences is, how are you getting future ready? My response was not on technology. My response was not any of those. My response was on the only thing we can be ready for is just have a very strong change muscle.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Neeraj Vijay. Neeraj is the Chief Information Officer of Onsemi, a semiconductor supplier company that provides intelligent power and sensing technologies and earns nearly $8 billion in annual revenue. Neeraj has been in his role for a little less than 3 years, and in that time has focused on the implementation of a people, process, technology, and data program to help transform the company. He's also passionate about artificial intelligence and its potential use in an organization like his. I look forward to hearing more about his team's efforts in these areas and beyond through this conversation. Prior to his current post, Neeraj was the Chief Information Officer of Western Midstream, and he spent 8.5 years at GE, including multiple stints as a business unit Chief Information Officer. Neeraj, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
I am so pleased to be talking to you. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. Well, Neeraj, let's begin with Onsemi's business, if you would. I mentioned in brief a little bit about it, but would love to hear more in your words.
Absolutely. And so let me start just by saying Onsemi is about $7.5 to an $8 billion company. So what we have been focused on is how do we be the key source for intelligent power and intelligent sensing? And let me start with sensing. So if you think about an automotive sensing element, all the autonomous driving is sensing. Is there someone crossing the road? How fast should be driving? Where is the next exit to be planned? All of that is sensing of autonomous driving. So that's one key focus area. And we pretty much have a fairly large market share in that automotive sensing space. And sensing also includes automotive auto stopping, not just self-driving, and all of those capabilities. When we talk about intelligent power, obviously, anytime you require efficient power management, that's where Onsemi technology come into play. So you could have a dumb power, which means you turn the switch off and switch on. But if you want some amount of intelligence to be put in power, that's where Onsemi technology comes into play. So if I use the same analogy for automotive, think about electric cars. So when you want to increase the range for electric cars, what you want is the minimum amount of losses with the power which you have in the battery, which requires a lot of intelligence. And we are the market leaders for a technology called silicon carbide for electric cars. So if you see an increase in the range from your named US leader to China to what's happening in Europe, Onsemi has been on the cutting edge for having the OEMs manage their power very, very effectively. So that's just few of the segments in automotive. But then we talk about power management for your hearing aid. You talk about your life and health sciences applications. You talk about your industrial applications. All of these, wherever you require efficient power management, Onsemi is trying to be at the cutting edge for the industry.
A fascinating overview. Thank you so much for that, Neeraj, and what an innovative set of spaces that you operate in. Look forward to hearing more about that. In the meantime, though, could you talk a bit about your purview as Chief Information Officer? What is within your span of control?
Absolutely. So I serve as SVP and Chief Information Officer for Onsemi. It's a part of my portfolio. Besides the enterprise IT and cybersecurity, I'm also responsible for the necessary infrastructure needed to make our engineering team perform their electronic testing and all of those things as well.
Very good. I appreciate that overview. And I mentioned in the introduction something you mentioned to me last time we caught up, which is as you charted the process of transforming this organization, the one that you found when you joined, you decided to frame it as people, processes, technology, and data, a framework that you developed to help inform that transformation. I wonder if you can talk briefly about the IT organization you found and the background into this framework that I've just mentioned.
Absolutely. Before I go and deep double click on what is happening at Onsemi, let me just tell you, we all, either at GE or Western Midstream and other places, we all have seen how the promises of La La Land coming from either you implement your ERT and the life would be wonderful, or you implement your data lake and your life would be wonderful. There was a time when CRM was, you put in Salesforce and you don't have to worry about anything as it relates to your revenue. And we all have learned through various of those promises not getting to what we want it to be. So one of the things which I've also learned is majority of your productivity and efficiency are lost at the edges. So when sales transitions to sales operations or sales operations transitions to manufacturing and vice versa. So with that context, we've been working on some of those digital thread concepts at General Electric. So basically the seeds of that digital thread, I got to learn a lot during my time at GE. But then when I got a chance to go and really create this framework at Onsemi, I defined digital thread has four key components: people, process, technology, and data. And when you talk about people, it's how do you want to go and put together the operating model for the organization. So if you have a sales operations organization, would you have shared services? Would you have regional team? You have local team? How do you want to go and put that operating model put in place? Then you have processes. As technologists, we always have been talking about standard global processes. So how do you make them be ready where we know for sure AI is going to get more and more embedded? Automation of those AI agents will come into play more and more. And we don't know what they look like today. But as we create these automation AI models, I wanted to make sure that the underlying processes are tailored in such a way where we are able to utilize them as when they are ready. So that's the processes piece. Then technology, those you would have to go and realize that there's no one system which would serve all your needs. We've seen that has not worked out. So I defined pillar platforms and then have them connected through the intelligent workflow. This is something which we all have in IT world. We have been trying to do for some period of time, and it's a stated approach of architecture. And the last piece is how do you curate the data and ensure that data continues to be the focus from the start of that particular digital thread. And that is the context of this. So the way we try and adopt it at Onsemi is we don't have technology projects. We don't have data programs. What we have defined are these 7 digital threads, which covers end-to-end processes across the company. And we have your IT teams and your business teams focused on those particular 7 digital threads across the spectrum for Onsemi. So that's something which is, taking the learnings, breaking certain rules, which we have always been, thinking about and have never got the right level of canvas to go and paint it with those broken rules. I think Onsemi is a great platform to try out those particular aspirations. And the not only the leadership team, but the IT team and the business team has responded very positively on the way we are trying to break the traditional rules, creating a new way of getting ourselves ready for what is to come.
I really like that that definition. And as you talk about the 7 threads that have been defined, can you talk a bit about the process of defining the 7, as well as how far along are you in the progress of transforming each of those?
Sure. So these 7, that's just the way the business runs. So let me just name them, starting from idea to market. So we are a technology product innovation company. So how do we get an idea, either working closely with a customer, co-designing it, and all of those things. So idea to market. So we define what an initial concept is, do the product development, getting to a point where it's ready to be available to be sold in the market. So that's one play. The second one is lead to order. So you got the idea, you are in the market, you generate a lead, and then you get to an order. So that's the second play. Third one is you got an order, so you have to plan to fulfill. This is where the planning in ensuring that we have the right set of material capacity and capability set available for that. The fourth one being procure to pay or source to pay. So you need to identify what components you need to source, how you're going to procure it, and how you're going to pay them. The fifth being silica to chip. So this is where the true hardcore manufacturing would come into play. Then you have hire to retire, which is basically all the associated stuff from HR perspective. And then the last one is record to report, which is the finance piece. So those are the six end-to-end digital threads. And then we have some horizontal digital threads, which help them across. So that horizontal is ESG. So we have a significant amount of focus on ESG, which runs across how you define a product all the way to go when you ship the product. So how do you go and track that piece? Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, all of those particular ones. Then you have your AI/technology elements or the infrastructure related to putting that AI piece, and the data being another one. So that's just the way we have encompassed it. That layer which we talked about, our infrastructure that has security, infrastructure, all the other associated stuff. So nothing which we have not had before, but what we try to do is, as you saw these digital threads, there was no discussion on what ERP we use, what Salesforce or something else. So I think to take the organization away from, hey, I like this product better than this, making the organization realize that, how do you break away from silos and not fall in love with each of these particular unique systems? I think that has been the most thrilling journey for not only me, but for the rest of the organization as well. And today, right from our CEO or to the board, or you go and talk to the shipping logistics expert, they talk about the associated digital thread they're working on. So I think that's been the journey so far. Where are we in the journey? I think we have pretty much initiated all pillar platform implementation across all the 7 of these digital threads. Some of them are coming close to their completion. Some of them are halfway there, and some of them are in the initial portions of it. So if I have to gauge, they're in different parts of the journey across in their life cycle. Some of them are coming close to their finishing line as well.
Very apparent through that description, Neeraj, the extent to which these are cross-functional, codependent between IT and collaboration with many other parts of the organization. You mentioned several of those specific instances of who the intended audience or the collaborator is, in fact. And I can only imagine this was probably a new mode of collaboration for your team. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about the cultural elements of this, the process by which you engaged perhaps in some new ways as a result of the whole concept of the digital thread.
Sure. I'm just pleasantly surprised how well the IT leadership team, as well as the broader IT team, has responded to this transition of, they used to call it, we were order takers, to now, training digital leaders. How do we go and make sure that journey continues to get us ready for what's come down to the future? One of the questions I was asked in one of the conferences is, how are you getting future ready? And we can all pontificate, how can all we be future ready? My response was not on technology. My response was not any of those. My response was on the only thing we can be ready for is just have a very strong change muscle, right? One of the things which I learned a lot during my time at GE is, they would change out CEOs 2 years to 3 years. I had, 4 CIO roles or so, 4 leadership roles in my 8 years. So there is always some of amount of change, which was always imminent. And that allows you to be ready for what's there to come. So I took many of those lessons. So when I was creating my leadership team, and the kudos goes to the folks who joined my leadership team, They were all joining pretty much at the same time. And then what we did was, typically you get all the new leaders and they have their portfolio, what they know, who the team members they're going to report into, and all of those things. So when they joined, and again, this is their leadership, and I give big kudos to them, they were not assigned their portfolio. So imagine 4 or 3 big leaders on the CIO staff, and they don't know where they draw a line on the teams, where they draw lines on what areas they need to focus on. And that was by design. And that created a significant amount of camaraderie for them to say, look, instead of creating false lines on these team reports into this leader and this leader is only responsible for this particular area, it kind of forced them to say, okay, we are in this together. So today we draw these rough lines so we can manage the team and manage the responsibilities and manage the outcomes. But tomorrow it's going to change. And that to me is a testament to how do we get change ready? Because a large amount of this, and even today, across the organization, I have seen a large amount of lateral movements of talent from one team to another, lateral movement of responsibility of driving outcomes from one team to another. Obviously, there's always some amount of things which we could do better, but I would say this is probably one of the better ones I have seen in my 25 years of career. So this is less on me. This is kudos to them that they responded so well and created that camaraderie. I don't recall in my 3 years where I have to draft a line to say, guys, this team now reports in here and this person reports in here, or this is done across a team. So that's just one of the rules we broke. And then also in terms of how we define these org structures, we don't have vice presidents of this or director for this or this. We have digital threads who they are driving.
Well, I really like that description, Neeraj. Thank you so much for it. And I'd love to maybe pull on one of the threads just to understand a bit about how your team gets involved. You mentioned ESG is one of the horizontals across this, and one can understand in the way you described your business the extent to which there might be opportunities to improve the carbon footprint and the ESG implications of what's being done. Can you talk a bit about some of the work that's being done there and the way in which your team gets involved?
Absolutely. So first, just let me talk about Onsemi. So there's an element of the area we play in is macro segments, which is very good for ESG anyway, either increasing the range for hybrid electric cars or normal hybrid cars, or having sensing capabilities where you have auto stopping for your cars, which saves lives. So the segment per se, these are automotive. You can go and connect the same dots for industrial and in other functions or other areas of life sciences as well. That's just on the macro Onsemi one, but internally also, our CEO has been on the cutting edge on say, okay, we want to be in the forefront and we have a carbon neutral by 2040 as our target, and we continue to march ahead of that. I'll give you a very simple example, like the key elements of what we even buy or partner with for consulting or any other ones. One of our key success criteria for selecting them is what's their ESG footprint like, which would reduce us. So that's just from an external standpoint. But then also working across engineering, marketing, sales, operations, the factories, how do we go and reduce the carbon footprint? We have a very large footprint in manufacturing. In half a degree's change in the way we manage our air conditioning could have a massive impact in terms of how we go and respond to our ESG initiatives. So there is a large amount of measuring it, documenting it, and then having micro plans, because I don't think there is one macro ESG plan which usually works. When you would have a macro guidelines, but the steps has to be at a micro level, at a factory level, or even within a factory to a section level. And I think in that collectively would really make the big movements. Anything which is macro, I think those are those are one-time big elements which continue to happen, but those are one part of the equation. The other part of the equation has to be the micro improvements in each areas.
Very interesting. As you describe the aspects of the threads and data being an element of it, data has a natural runway towards artificial intelligence, and I wonder how you've thought about the incorporation of that. I mean, yours clearly just the business itself is must be immersed in artificial intelligence in so many ways, given the way in which you've described sensors, for example, and other mechanisms that require it. Talk a bit about your team's use of it as well, and the ways in which it's aiding your activities.
So look, I mean, I don't want to sound that we have solved all world hunger and we have no challenges across all these digital threats. Like we are halfway there, or in some cases we more than halfway there. In some cases we are somewhere in the halfway there. But data quality, it's an age old problem. Curating the data so that it can be used for either data sciences or AI, that continues to be an ongoing struggle. And the word I use, struggle, is because you have to put a focus on that. Otherwise, if you put it under the carpet, it'll never get better. So I'll give you a very simple example, right? So we did an augmented AI solution, obviously using large language models and everything to solve and be the community hoster for our customers. So in typical situations, when you have to have a community where various sets of customers come for either deliberating their own problems and finding solutions, so we typically would just host the community platform, and the various sets of parties comes in and probably collaborate and then also ask questions. In order for us to become really good at making that collaboration better and also providing high degree of responses back to our customers, we have leaned on to this AI-based enablement where 50,000 of these spec sheets, and each of these spec sheets are 50 pages deep, to say, hey, for this temperature, for this particular application, for this particular situation, have we seen this problem before? And to be able to go and navigate through that journey and have that community get a proper and a quicker response with a caveat to say, look, our confidence rate on this answer is 89%. And if you really want to do this, we should have the human in the loop. But to even today, that responsiveness itself makes the community come to life much more. Are we there yet? No. But do we have the basic fundamentals which would allow us to build on those? I would probably say this is a combination of how do you harvest the technical expertise? And these are PDF documents which at page 4 had specific requirements defined, and how do we get extraction out of it and make it work? I think those are the ones which we continue to work on. We all know the hallucination problems of the AI related stuff. So we had to create processes which allows a human in the loop, which allows our customers to be very cognizant of, hey, this is what we think. But up till now, the response has been fairly positive. As you can imagine, right? Would you prefer to wait 2 days to get an answer with 95% accuracy, or would you be okay with getting an instant response with 80% accuracy? Depends on where you are in the journey.
Yeah, well said. I mentioned, and you've alluded to as well, your time at GE, and it's remarkable the number of your peer chief information officers who spent time at GE and have drawn from that experience in their own leadership style, mechanisms, et cetera. You've alluded to it yourself. I wonder if I could ask you to reflect a little bit about what made that time special for you and your own diagnosis as to why so many people have come out of General Electric to be remarkable leaders across the business landscape.
Look, I would say I learned a lot more. In fact, all of broader leadership journey and learnings came through my time at GE. I mean, I was incredibly lucky to have been surrounded by probably one of the best talented team across the place. Also, having the canvas which had so much of complexity built in because the size of GE and things which it was trying to solve for, creates a very good learning environment to say, how do you deal with complexity? How do you deal with global view? How do you deal with this? And once you do that, you inherently create these neural networks. So you are able to effectively approach either changes or complexity, or how do you go and make this small thing go bigger across a global level. And they happen in a very organic fashion. And I believe that's the reason you see so many of my peers as well as my seniors who have been doing such incredible work across various spectrums of the industry. And I lean on them very often. In fact, there's always an inherent circle. Anytime you go to a conference, you're going to find 15 of my colleagues, and we just connect as if we were all in the same MDC class at Crotonville.
Neeraj, I would love to hear early in 2025. I'm wondering if there are any other trends beyond the ones we talked about that have you particularly excited as you look to the year ahead. As I say, we've spoken about a number of business and technology trends of consequence. Anything else come to mind?
We don't know how the world is going to change with AI. We don't know how the world is going to change with, obviously, geopolitical changes. And then it's very difficult for think beyond. I mean, remember, there was a time when we used to make these 5-year plans, then those 5-year plans became 3-year plans. And now 3-year looks like a very long horizon. So how do we keep that perspective of empathy towards ourselves, and then also empathy towards the broader ecosystem, and then also adopt what is changing, and more importantly, focus on what is not changing. And I think that's going back to the first principle. What would not change? Let's make sure that piece is secured versus just chasing what is changing. And I think that's the key element, which hopefully we are able to give enough time and attention, not just me, but just broadly ecosystem-wise and Onsemi-wise, because there's a lot of things which create anxiety, create changes, create elements which are outside our control. And we tend to focus on things which are outside our control and try to control them, versus focus on things which is in our control and try to see how we can respond versus react.
I love that perspective, and it harkens back to the great point you made before that you need to just know the change is coming and orient the team towards a nimble, framework in order to make sure that they can pivot towards opportunity as it presents itself. I wanted to conclude by asking you if there's anything you've recently read, listened to, and/or watched that you would recommend to your peers. Anything come to mind, Neeraj?
One of the things which, and when we were talking earlier, Peter, we have talked about this. I usually focus on how do we get ourselves in clear thinking, right? One of the key things is, is our internal state aligned with ourselves? And if the answer is yes, then it allows us to have a better clear thinking. So I would highly encourage people to find a way to do, even if it's 5 minutes of mindfulness, meditation, however you want to call it. There are various categories of this, but allows you to go and really get into not being in a reactive mode, but more of a responding mode. And there are various tools and techniques which are certainly available. One of the IoT device, you're going to get a kick out of this, Peter, but there is a device which I'm a big fan, and I've gifted it to various of my executives and others as well. That device is basically it's an EEG device which you wear on your head. It's like headband, and that EEG device allows you to be a lot more mindful, which would allow people to do a little bit of more mindful exercise in a much more fun way, because there's a large set of people who would say, I cannot meditate, or I don't like to sit down and do nothing. Okay, if you cannot, then there are various exercises. If you like music, it would have a beat which would allow you to go and get yourself in that state. Or or it would have breathing. So there are ways, and this eco feedback or biofeedback is a real-time feedback, and it makes it much more fun, much more easier for people to go and really get there. So I would probably focus nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with high tech, but this is the high tech to get you to low tech.
Great suggestion, Neeraj. Thank you so much for sharing it. And thank you, more generally speaking, for sharing a bit more about your journey at Onsemi, the remarkable work that you and your team are doing, the ways in which you've oriented the thinking and the collaboration across the organization, lessons from your time at GE, among other things we've covered. It's been a great conversation.
I'm happy to share. This is still work in progress. We have broken certain rules. We have made some headway. Certainly, these programs have odds against us. We all know 70% of the transformation programs fail to deliver what we expect them to deliver. So we are trying to play against the odds. I've been just humbled by how the various IT team members as well as the organization has responded so far. Work is not done. It will continue to be, and we'll see something unknown coming and hitting us. So all we can do is prepare ourselves to respond versus react.
Well, we'll look forward to remaining abreast of the continued progress that your team makes. Thank you again, Neeraj.